Okay, cool. Guys, good start. Good start. We are finally live. Okay. Um, Welcome to the second session of. Oh, okay. Got it. Welcome to the second session of Back to the Bar, the 5-part seminar series from Brown Forman, this year's virtual Tales of the Cocktail. This second session here, I'm super excited about. As you can see, I will not be the talent on this session, just here to keep the conversation going. The Back to the Bar series that we've created here at Brown Forman really just aligns with our values of how we feel we need to support trade in this unprecedented moment. And that is to give them tips, tricks, and tools to be successful in the hospitality industry, but really beyond. We're living in a moment right now that none of us could have predicted, that no one knows when it's going to end, and none of us can really understand at the moment how it's going to change our industry. So the skills that we want to help our trade family really develop are some that we really find valuable. So today we're going to be talking about selling yourself. I think we can all agree that when the hammer came down in March, and many of us lost our daily revenues, what we started to see was that the opportunities were coming from brands and other companies and saying, hey, bartenders, you have great skills. Help me activate digitally, right? So while a lot of us understood, in this millennial culture or post-millennial culture, that having an online presence was important, what we started to find was that those who were really receiving the opportunities were those who had already built a strong presence online. And I wanted to kind of talk about the benefits, the pathways, and perhaps the pitfalls to doing that. So today I am joined by Pam Wiznitzer and Walt Easterbrook. Both have spent numerous years in hospitality and are really inspirations when it comes to building personal brands. So I will let them speak a little bit more to their story. And Walt, why don't you kick us off? Tell us a little bit more about your story and how you got started in the hospitality business.
Sure. Jordan, thanks for having me. Special thanks to Brown Forman for doing this. I think it's really super important, and now more than ever, to bring the community together and help each other out. I really feel we're all untapped entrepreneurs, so the more we can get together and the more we can do things like this, I think the better this whole industry is going to raise up. So thank you for putting this together. A little bit about me. I'm Walter Easterbrook. I started probably when I was about 14 years old, washing dishes in my small town in upstate New York. And then I, moved on to college where I didn't really get my degree. I bar backed and I ran college parties, and I was sponsored by a beer company. So I think that fell in my love of the bar industry and sponsorships and events. And then eventually I went to New York City. And instead of getting a real job, I started bartending, and I started bartending in probably some really cheesy family kind of restaurants in Times Square and near Madison Square Garden, and then kind of moved my way around from bars, restaurants, lounges, clubs. And then I opened up the Bowery Hotel in 2007. And that's kind of where I kind of went on a different trajectory of building my personal brand in the industry. And I went on to launch my company, the Bowery Collective. And that whole process was a couple of years of learning and failing until I finally got my business. And basically, where I am today is I create big experiential events. We hold a big whiskey one. We do a tequila mezcal event called Arte Agave. So we ran that, scaled that up. And then I joined actually Woodford Reserve for 2 years as their ambassador, went down that road, and then came back to my company. And we built a sales division off of that. We built retail marketing off of that. And then also we do a lot of advocacy programs to connect brands to the bar community in more meaningful ways, more through like personal development like we're doing today. So that's my last 30 years kind of thrown into a minute and a half.
I love that. So you definitely have nothing to do. You're definitely sitting around eating bonbons. Great. Okay, wonderful. Yeah. Pam, I'm sure you have a similarly packed a few years to tell us about. So tell us about your journey in the hospitality.
Yeah, I'm going to consolidate it down, kind of like the Walt way. But basically, I started bartending on the side when I was in college at Columbia, part of the Columbia bartending agency, just for fun to make some extra money. And then when I graduated, a few years after my graduation was the recession, which is a funny thing to talk about considering that my entire career in the industry started during the recession, which is kind of in sync with what's happening right now. So it's like it's very interesting cycle, if you will, 10-year cycle. But during the recession, lost my job, started bartending at a daytime sports bar in a spot in New York called Murray Hill. For those who know, it's like a very bro-centric place. And as a daytime person, I was like, all right, let's give this a go. And I had so much fun. I loved it. I fell in love with it. And I just started going to seminars, going to any events I could go to, any education I could be a part of, meeting people. I just started really putting myself out there. I made a blog. Didn't really get much traction, but it got me into the room because I said I was a blogger, and that was a really big thing back then. So it was about access to space. And I just woke up every day with this like desire to be part of the cocktail community because I saw what was growing. I saw very inspirational people like Sasha Petretsky and, Dale DeGroff and Aisha Sharp and Julie Reiner. And I was like, I want to be part of that. So I did that, and I applied myself, and I started running a few programs in the city after that sports bar. And then I got a little break at a bar called the Dead Rabbit that was going to be starting in New York City. So I was a part of their third hire that they ever had. I opened that place. I carried things all up and down in it. Was there for a few years. And then after that, opened a space in New York called Seamstress, which won a bunch of awards. And after that, the beloved bar. And after that, I just started doing more consulting work. So a lot of my work then ended up being a result of the brand that I had developed for myself via, which we'll talk about, an online digital presence and more. And worked with like American Airlines and Pepsi, Big Apple Circus. I've done like the big and the small. So here I am now. I'm doing lots more beverage consulting. I also work with a cocktail guru very actively. And a lot of the work I do now is via Zoom. I do a lot of Zoom work with clients. So it's a very interesting time that we've shifted into.
Thank you both for sharing your stories. I'm relatively newer to this space, so I've been here 7 years now. Can't believe it's actually been that long. But Pam, I sympathize with the idea of coming from an Ivy League school similarly and falling into an industry that you kind of never thought you'd fall into, and then falling in love and realizing that you wanted to build your brand and in the space. So on that topic, I guess a question for both of you: what helped you establish and then grow your presence in the hospitality industry? I think there's two parts to that question. So what helped you kind of grow and establish yourself? Walt, you want to kick?
Yeah, sure. I think for me, I don't have the normal trajectory of kind of what I did. I sort of went in my own direction. I didn't go do a lot of seminars. I didn't go to a lot of the meetings and things like that. I just sort of kind of charted my own course, if you will. And that's what kind of helped for me. So I didn't really, when people were doing X, Y, and Z, I was just kind of like doing my own thing over here. So I think what that did is it got me just to start doing things. I started to take more chances than anything else. And I got to a point where, I was bartending for like 15 years and I was like, I felt good, but I was like, I can't keep this up for another decade. So I really started taking chances, and that's what helped me kind of go to the next direction. So I didn't really know what everybody else was doing. And when somebody said, hey, you want to stand behind a table and sample stuff, even though I had like one of the best jobs I thought in the world at the time, I just said yes. And I was literally would stand behind a table and other brands would come up and be like, what are you doing here? And I was like, representing this brand today. And they're like, you do this stuff? And I'm like, I do this stuff. And they're like, what's your rate? I'm like, $264. I don't know. I just started kind of making it up. And what I'm getting at is I really just put myself out there and started to do things and started to say yes. And that's when more of the opportunities started to come. I'm a big, who I am, I jump first and build my wings on the way down kind of person. So that's what I did with the bar community. I just said yes, figured it out, said yes, figured it out. And when people were like, send me an invoice, this was like 14 years ago, I'm like, I don't know what that is. Send me your marketing deck. I was like, Google marketing deck. I don't even know what that is. So I really just, like I said, I just took chances and kind of went on my own path. And that's really kind of what helped. And I'll deep dive into some of the details later in the conversation, but that's really kind of what got me going. I just said yes, took chances, and started moving.
I like that. I like that a lot. Take the chances, say yes. Very cool.
Yeah. Walt and I spoke before this, obviously, and we have so many similarities in our story. And I think it's because when we're talking about selling yourself or building your brand, there are tactics with really successful people that they share. And I think an underlying thing here between myself and Walt is that we found niches and spaces that weren't being utilized, and we went in there. And we took every opportunity and said yes and went in there. I think the biggest thing when people are trying to establish themselves right now or to make themselves pop or anything else is, what are you doing that's different than anybody else? Like if you're just throwing up some pictures on your Instagram of cocktails, I've seen a million of those. So why is yours different? Why would I even follow you? What are you contributing that is different? You just talk about rum again? I don't care. Why are you different? So with me, at the time when I started, and I can say this, like back in 2009, like we didn't see a presence of women. We didn't see a lot of that. And especially as a Jewish woman, there's still not as many of us. And so for me, that was it. I was like, I'm a Jewish female bartender, and that's going to get me somewhere. And it totally has. That's like been my niche, my area. And I really honed in on it because it's allowed me to get access to conversations and people, mentors, spaces that I think has really helped create the brand that I have now. And I just woke up every morning eager and hungry, and not at 3 p.m. I woke up at like 8 a.m., 9 a.m. to like get things done. I think that for me is sort of what helped me grow and sort of get that established presence. And as Walt said, just saying yes and say, I sit there and I will support you. I hope you support me. I will, at informational interview, I will take that call. Yes.
I love that. I love that just say yes mentality. I also love what's different. Like, what are you going to contribute? I think was a beautiful question that you asked. And I think that that's a question we have to continue to ask ourselves and even maybe be more detailed with and more, purposeful with at this point when, a lot of the digital space, especially that we're in right now, is so flooded, right? And kind of building on that, I'm kind of interested in, as the two of you have built your personal brands and they are so strong and you continue to help other people do that, I'd be interested in sort of the benefits and the pitfalls of having a personal brand in the hospitality space, because I think that everyone sees totally fine. It's not a big question at all. But a lot of people see it as the golden ticket, and I think that there's probably so much more nuance we're not thinking about when we're seeing that.
Yeah. So I'll jump in if you don't mind. For me, I just talked about an unconventional path. Like I don't really like to follow the rules. I like to do things my way. When I was in school, I just sort of did things my way. And as I got older, I was like, oh, I'm an adult now. I can just do things how I want to do it. That's the biggest benefit for me. I just love I'm very creative. I like to go down my own road and do my own thing. So the benefit of having your own personal brand, your own company, is that you could literally just do that. You don't have to ask for permission. You don't have to have a meeting to another person to say yes to something. You could literally just go do it. And starting my events, and that's one of the things that kind of helped me get established, is some of the festivals that I did. I didn't really study like how people produced events. I talked to brands and I found out like what their needs were, so I was able to just not duplicate what everyone was doing. I was able to learn what the brands wanted and plug that into my existing events. And then I just, like I said, I always said, well, I want to do an event this way, so why don't I just do that? And then actually paid off more. And people were just like, brands used to be like, this was so much fun and thank you for being here. And I'm like, why are you thanking me? You're the one that paid me. But I realized I was doing something a little bit different than what everybody else was doing. So anyway, I'll keep saying that till I'm blue in the face. I like to just be creative and kind of go down my own path. And then the thing upon it is, if you look at, Pam and myself, it's like we kind of have multiple projects. And I think that's cool as well. Like it keeps you kind of on your toes, and you can bring in this company and work with them, but at the same time, work with other companies doing a few other things. And that's what I like as well. You can work on several projects and you're not just held into a box doing one sort of thing. And then people don't see you as the whatever person, or this person. You're kind of your own thing, which is kind of cool. And just kind of, talking about the downfalls is everything I just said, it's all on you. So when it fails, you fail. And you got to bring in money. So you're the one that has to bring in money. So your phone calls are like, marketing department. Yep. sales department. Yep. You're everything, and you're the one that's out there, and then you have to bring the business in. So it's a roller coaster ride. I mean, if you want to be an entrepreneur, it's very, very up and down. So if that's something that you don't want to do, don't do it. Go get a good job and go do your thing. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's a lot of highs and lows. So be prepared for that. But if you get rocking and rolling, it's really, really exciting and a lot of fun.
Yeah. And it's basically, just to like sum it up, it's just you are your own boss. So if you're not good at being a self-starter, and you dilly-dally all day, you're going to get nothing done, and you won't be successful, because you are only for yourself and no one else is really for you. And there's the myth and the fallacy that bartenders have managers. Maybe there's like 2 or 3 of them out there that have that. That's great. But people ask me all the time, like, who's your manager? I said, I don't have a manager. I do it all myself. Okay. We really need to remember that for a lot of people who do identify as their own personal brand, because that's what they put themselves out to do, they are managing themselves. Okay. So you have to be a self-starter. And with that, talking about the downfalls, there are a lot of downfalls. And the biggest one is that there are so many additional pressures and risks, and you risk higher levels of disappointment. It's so much more greater that, you're under a microscope all the time. So when you get to a certain level, because you're very well established, just know that giants can fall as well. And we've all seen it. Things have happened to me. Things have happened to other people. It's really important to know that if something happens, there's accountability that you have to take. You can't hide behind any other company or curtain or anything else. And so those are big parts of working for yourself.
I think those are all really important points. And I particularly love the idea of not being sort of held down into a box, right? So we can really do different things. And I say that as bartenders with personal brands, as someone who now works at Brown-Forman, and I run our brand ambassador department, and we're constantly figuring out, how to talk to bartenders in the trade. And I'm telling you, the trade with like the presences are the ones we want, but sometimes, the trade with the presences are the ones a lot of brands want to work with. And I say that from personal experience. So I think that's really special. If there are people here, and I hope there are, who are kind of interested in building those skills, right? Where do they start? And 2, I guess, how do they build or amplify that presence in this community? What like tips and tricks would you give folks?
I think this was like one of the favorite parts that Walt and I had in our conversation, because this could go on forever, but we will ensure that doesn't happen, because we only have until 6. There's the biggest one. There is a huge fallacy that some people just have the silver spoon. Okay. And that things are just given to them. And some, like all these bartenders, are just blessed. And I will say that we have to acknowledge that there is privilege. And there are a lot of things systemically that we are trying to counteract, and we are trying to dismantle right now that have been in place. With that said, at the same time, a lot of people who have been successful, and there are people I've worked with alongside, and we talk a lot about our struggles, because we all are our own brands working for ourselves, is that we just go out and get it and get things done. Okay. And a lot of that is having an established schedule. I keep office hours, and office hours are from 9 until 5. I actually wake up at like 7 o'clock or 7:30 because my dog, but it's important to be active, because when those emails start rolling in at 9 a.m., if I miss that one that has the opportunity for a chance to do something with the brand, 5 other bartenders got it too. And they're waiting to see who's going to come back to you first. And I want to be there first. So it's really important that you are on a schedule that works, that is accountable, that people know that they can reach you. Your phone is there, your computer's up, and you're ready to rock and roll. When you are not able to be reached, that's when the opportunities slip away from you, because they can't count on you. There's no accountability. And I will say also with the schedule, and this is just important to note, it takes 21 days to form a habit. So if you're somebody who likes to sleep in really late and you're going to try to start waking up early, don't do it for like 2 days and just quit. You really got to stick with it. So if you're trying to change your schedule and your life around into something you really want to do, stick at it for at least 21 days. It's 3 weeks. I know it's a lot of time, but in this grand scheme of life in quarantine, it feels like nothing. So, but really think about that when you're trying to change behaviors or change mannerisms
And I love that advice, because as someone who used to be boots in the street, right? And I didn't really have to make an appointment before like 10 or 11, you know? So like if I got out of my house at like 9:30, like we were doing, like if I had to get out of my house at 9:30, we were doing well. Like, and a lot of times I didn't have a meeting until 3 or 4, or no, everyone canceled my meetings and I didn't have to be at the bar until 5, right? To do my brand ambassador thing, right? Great. But now that I actually work in corporate office, like my first week here, I was like, people get here at what time? Those are the marketing team sending you the emails. They don't expect you to be up at 6 a.m., but you know, they leave their desks at 5. And if they send it to you at 9, you know, they do, someone who is on top of that does really show initiative and shows that you want to be a part of it. So yeah, you know, understand that the marketing teams who are asking you to do these things are sometimes on a totally different schedule and may have never had the job you've had. They respect what you do, but they've perhaps never been a bartender. So they may not understand what a professional bartender life is like. So making those little sacrifices or moving a little bit more into that other world that you'll have to befriend and start to try to manage, I think is a really good tip.
Yeah. I mean, just saying with that, like audit your life. And that's exactly what I did. A lot of people I talk to, they're always trying to get me drunk. They're like, Walter, you never drink. And I'm like, yeah, talk to people I used to bartend with 15 years ago and see how Walter was. So like, if you want to be taken seriously, start taking it seriously. But also on top of that, what, you know, just a few tips that like really helped me is there's a saying, and if you ever did any of my events, the one thing I always say is stop taking tickets and start having coffee. And the one thing is with the bar industry today is there's a lot of gifts, right? There's a lot of fun. There's, you know, tickets to the Barclays, there's Tales of the Cock, you know, there's all this fun stuff. I mean, it's amazing, right? And, you know, trips to, you know, back in the day, trips down, you know, whatever. But, you know, when I started back in the day, and I'll age myself, a free beer at a Yankee game was like the big thing. And now there's a lot going on. So the thing is this, right? Brands now recognize how important bartenders are, right? So they come to you and they want to thank you and they want to have a good time with you and they want to take you out. The one thing that I started doing is I just wanted to stop drinking and eating so much. So I stopped saying no to all these things, but all the brands said, how can we help you? How can we work with you? You know, you've been doing all this for us. What can we do? And I'll just take it because I mentioned Arte Agave. When I started that business, I didn't really know what to do and where to go. So I went to one of the main guys at the distributor and said, hey, I've got this idea. You know, I want the events person at this tequila brand. I want marketing people. I want to talk to these people. So instead of like spending money on me, I said, I want 20 minutes with somebody. And that's what I started to do. I started to sit down with the events director. I sat down with the national marketing director of a really big supplier, and her and I just chatted for an hour. And I said, if I did this, would you pay for this? If I did that, would you sponsor it? What are you looking for? What does success look like for you? So what I did is I started leveraging my position and having different conversations with suppliers to help navigate my way through. Instead of me saying, hey, sponsor my birthday party, I said, you know, I've got ideas and I just want to talk to the right person. And more than they were just like, sure, you want a 20-minute phone call with somebody? That really, really took me to another level because I was able to navigate. Because 15 years ago, I didn't know the difference between a supplier, a distributor, an agency. I didn't know what any of that was. Brown Forman and Empire and Greenhouse. I didn't know what that was. But that helped me navigate. So please leverage your position. I've got 2 other bullet points real quick. Is one, and we were just talking about it a little bit, is, you know, watch your public persona. You might be amazing. You might be super smart. You might be good at talking, but, you know, bartenders talk, and so do other brand people. They talk as well. So, you know, when you're up for a job or you're up for something, people kind of know who you are. And I'm not saying that you have to go out and change everything about yourself, be you. But at the same time, if you're that person, you know, out at 5 a.m. over at Mother's or Holiday or wherever you're going, just remember that, you know, you're representing somebody. So somebody, you know, might say, hey, that person stand up, I want to hire them. Or if they see what you're doing or how you're acting, that could be a different conversation. And then lastly, you know, like I said, I kind of went my own path. So build a diverse network. There's a lot of these seminars that are great. There's master classes that are great. Jordan's doing a lot of other amazing things. It's great. But also what helped me is I started talking to marketing people outside of the liquor industry, people that owned their own business outside of the liquor industry. And what that gave me was some clarity and some other ideas on what to do. So, people are on your Facebook threads and they've got their private Facebook threads and you're all talking, which is super great, but also get off of them and start talking to other people in other industries. And it's really, really going to help you sort of move on and give you some more clarity and some more ideas.
This might be the biggest point that Walt and I really want to convey to all of you is that it's so great that we keep talking within our industry, but that will get you nowhere as an established brand unless people outside the industry know who we are, because there are hundreds of thousands and millions of people who have no idea that Tales of the Cocktail is going on. We all know what's going on, but they don't. And for me to tell someone from the arts world, me tell someone from the sports world and someone from the marketing world, from the tech world that I'm doing this week, they're like, what is it about? And that's my network. So get out there. Diverse network means a lot of things. It means people who are not like you in many ways. And it's important that you keep that well-rounded in order to establish yourself, because the majority of my clients aren't from this industry. They are corporate clients who want work done and they want to learn about cocktails and they want my expertise. And that's what's getting me further today than ever before. So reach out. LinkedIn. If you don't have a LinkedIn, that is what all of you are going to do right after this session. You all are going to set up and establish your LinkedIn, because that is the best way to professionally network and connect outside of our industry to other industries. Okay, thank you. And you all let me know when you do it, because you can me, and then we'll all
connect with both of us. LinkedIn, seriously, good point, ma'am.
I love that. And I think a couple of things that kind of came to me when you guys were speaking. One, I'm of the mind that people want to help people, but you have to make that connection, right? People want to help people, right? So ask for that coffee, right? Ask for that meeting, ask for that phone call, because honestly, if you ask me for something and I can't do it this week, we'll find time on the calendar next week. But people want to help people. So, do reach out. And I think also I loved the idea of a public, having a public persona, because that's so true. A couple of things I want to say on that, a little peek under the curtain. At Brown Forman, every time we hire a bartender to be an influencer, we have to submit their handles to our legal department, and our legal department looks at them, right? And it's not this blanket we can hire anybody we want. We can't. We have to protect our brands and our, what we believe in as a company, which is, very old school family values. And it's an incredible place to work, but they look, they're not judging you, but they will say, no, we can't work with that person, right? So I think, we do have to understand that while we say this, there are practical applications. And then the last thing I want to say is,
just tip Jordan into there just 2 seconds. If your Instagram is mixed in with your personal life and you want to start establishing yourself more as a brand in the bartending world, make your personal one private and start a brand new account. Just start a brand new account that is only forward facing of what you're offering the world with your bartending expertise, and just have 2 accounts. And that is an okay thing to do. There are very few people who can put the 2 together. I have found a way to integrate both in my life, but not everyone can do that. And if I started this again, now, if I didn't have that, I would have a completely professional account.
Love that. Love that. I like the idea that, as we are in Tales, the whole mantra of, we probably met at Tales is a lot more useful if you actually remember meeting that person at Tales. Just throwing that out there. I'm guilty of both, but.
Oh, wait, I can't hear you.
No, Jordan, we lost you.
Nope.
See how I'm so great at that. Guys, I'm running things at Brown Forman. Okay. Can't work a mute button. All right. So another question that we were chatting about a little bit is what can bar owners, right? Bar products, bar services, because we talk a lot about bartenders. And I think there's a lot of different folks here at Tales of the Cocktail that join us and offer their wisdom and also want to absorb it. What can bar owners or bar products and services do to achieve the same for their bars, right? We talk a lot about people and what they can do on their personal Instagram and LinkedIn. What do we think about bars or products?
Yeah. So one, I haven't ran a ton of bars, but I'm just going to give you a perspective from somebody who represented products and talking to bar owners. The one thing I see a lot is, everyone knows this story, right? You go into a bar owner and they're like, what can you do for me? And you're like, well, what do you want? And they're like, what do you got? And it's this whole two-step kind of thing, right? And it, sorry, my wife makes fun of me. I'm a big talker. I'm always moving. So I lost my notes here. So the one thing is, if you're a good brand ambassador, right, you have ideas of what you want to bring into the bar. But what kind of kills me sometimes is bar owners or managers or GMs or something really have no clue what they're doing for 3 months or 6 months or for the fall season or for the summer season, right? So you go in and you want to do some stuff with them, and they're just like, they don't really know what they're doing. So the bars and restaurants or hotels that really get support and are people that know what they're doing for the summertime, or they know what they're doing with the fall season. And when you walk in and you're like, hey, I want to work with you, they're like, cool, we're doing this. We're doing a music series, or we're doing a culinary series. We're doing this series. And they already have all the ideas ready to go, and they know what they want from you. And I guess, like I said, I know some owners will be like, well, they should just bring stuff to me. That's fine, but it's a lot better if you know exactly what you're doing and what's going on, and let everyone know, from the waiter to the bartender to the GM to the manager to the owner. That way, when opportunities come in, you can speak on it right there and then, or like Jordan had talked about, if it's not me that can help you, I can connect you to somebody else. Like I said, I see it over and over and over again where bars want help and they want some stuff going on, but they have no clear vision of what they want to do. So anyway, that's my one little tidbit of someone who represents brands talking to bars. Have a clue and understand what you're going to do for the season.
Yeah. I think those are two really major points. As someone who's like run bar programs, physical bar spaces, and then obviously, I think between all of us, we know hundreds and hundreds of bar operators. Especially now during the time of COVID, I think this is more important now than ever before. There are so many components to make your bar stand out versus another bar. Because here in New York, you walk down the street and there's like 5 restaurants on the street. What's going to make people come to yours? And the things that I've seen when successful places have opened, it's because of the following factors. First off, they don't follow suit. They're not trying to be like something that's already there and already established. This goes back to building your brand. Same thing with bartenders. Don't do something you've already seen. You're like, that's a cool thing, I'm going to do it too. No one cares. It's already being done. Do something authentically new that defines yourself. And then the biggest thing, and I've said this in every place I've always opened, I said this to owners, for people I operate under, I always say, what is your identity? And if they can't answer that question, there's a high likelihood I'm not going to work with them, because they're not opening it with intentionality. And that's the difference. Okay. So when you have a space, you should always ask yourself, what is the identity of the space? And I like to have about 3 words that describe the space, because that's something that you should reiterate to your staff. That should be the philosophy of your space. And that should be your focus. And that's going to resonate. If everyone's on board with those 3 identifying factors, it's going to showcase itself on your social media. You're going to be able to have better talking points to the press. More of your clientele are going to understand and say what it is that you are, because that's going to be the language that's constantly going to be verbalized to everybody. And the other thing is authenticity and transparency. We're at an age that you can't hide anything, okay? And we will see through. People can get their hands on records and books. There's Yelp. Like, you can't hide, okay? So you have to be authentic the whole way through as a bar. And you can see the bars that are just very transparent about their operations, their hiring processes, tipping, like anything that is in-house costs, wages, like hardships, successes. Those are the spaces that people respect and they want to support, and constantly will have clientele coming back time and time again. And that's going to make a successful, very self-branded bar or restaurant versus another one that's down the street.
I love that. And I would also say, as someone now like trying to figure out what all of our brand ambassadors are supposed to do in this moment, and how do I provide them with tools to really to help bars, right? We're going to come in with programming. We're going to come in what we think is right, but like, please help us. Please, tell us what we can do to support you, especially in this weird moment, right? I think that's really, we would love that. Like, tell us if you don't want our program and you want us to do something else. Anyway, but so speaking of COVID, I guess, good pivot there. What do you see as kind of the benefit of this personal brand and during COVID, potentially post COVID-19 world that we're in?
Woo! Well, March changed a lot of things. And I will say, for it also made a lot of bartenders and bars look at how will they get recognized, who's going to notice them, how are they going to find work, and this is where this conversation really comes to head. This is very real. I do think COVID has been a really great time because we've seen a lot of personalities and bartenders rise. And we've been able to also use digital platforms to showcase people at a greater and more rapid rate because people weren't interacting with these interfaces as frequently as they're doing right now. So our ability to reshare things, repost, talk about people have brought more people to the forefront, which has been, I think, such a successful part of COVID. And the opportunity for people who didn't maybe get exposure when they were shaking behind a bar to now be seen because they're talked about more by a community or by influencers who collectively say, let's use our platforms to talk about other people. I think that is a really wonderful and responsible part of being of this new COVID era. And it is where your personal brand also comes into play because as someone who has an established personal brand, people look to you as an authority. So they're looking for your advice and what you invest into, what bottles you might be touching, all eyes are on that a lot more now than ever before. So a lot more is at stake again, and your reputation and who you talk about, who you work with, is what brands are going to look at for hiring purposes. But you're also a hub of knowledge. And luckily, a lot of brands have come to me and said, hey, Pam, we're looking for 5 bartenders with X, Y, and Z, expertise who you know. And I'm going to tell all of you right now a secret. I refer a lot of people. I may have never met you, by the way, in real life, but I follow what you do. And I have given a lot of names of people forward because I see the hard work that you do. I have heard about you from other people, or you're a friend of mine, and you can live anywhere. And I do this multiple times a day. So just know that there are people watching. There are the personas watching over. And I think that is a great time of COVID.
We have a question in the Q&A I think speaks to this. And I think you've probably already answered it, but I do want to acknowledge it. So Renzel Cabrera, he put in the chat, how important do you think social media like Instagram is for industry professionals?
I think it depends what you are looking to accomplish. I think there is an unfortunate byproduct today because of COVID that if your Instagram doesn't have as high, you don't have as many followers or high engagement, a lot of brands sometimes don't want to work with you, which I think is unfortunate, and we need to figure out ways to change that. I do think digital presence is important because it's your way to connect to a different community, a different part of the community, and to communities outside of the industry. Again, it goes back to our Walt and my earlier talking point about a diverse network. This is your opportunity to connect so easily to other networks. So I do think a social media presence is important. Now, when you do it, again, authenticity, what are you trying to convey about yourself? How does it look? Are you sharing enough? Are you oversharing? And it does have to be refined in some ways. But I do think we are moving in an age that if you are not investing in your social media platform along with what you're doing behind a bar, you will get left behind. And I'm sorry, that's such an unfortunate thing. But it's the way that if you can't progress with modernity, it's kind of like Darwinism in a way.
Totally. One of the next question on our on.
Can I just jump in real quick before the next question? One, just to jump on that social media thing. I guess we would call a latecomer to Instagram and all that stuff. I started posting, like I said, I just started Instagram a couple years ago, and I was like, man, for my business, I really need to start posting more. And I literally just started posting the process of my work everywhere I was going, what I was doing. Because I didn't want to get on social media because I wasn't like, hey, look at me, I'm at fancy dinners and stuff like that. That's not really my thing. So I didn't want to post that. But I started posting all my work, everything I was doing. And what started happening is everyone's like, wow, Walter, you're like a busy guy. You work hard. And I'm like, what? I always work hard. Now I'm posting it. But I'll tell you what happened. I have 600 followers. I have no followers, right? But what started happening is people started to see me at bars and restaurants, and they're like, oh, I didn't know you did this, or I didn't know you did that. And then somebody, literally, I got a client, a big client last year, because he's like, do you do this? And I'm like, yes, I do that. So literally, and it all happened because of social media. I was just posting all the work that I was doing, and people didn't realize. I thought people knew who I was and what I did, but they didn't. And the more I posted the work and the stuff I was doing, the more they were calling me and saying, "Oh, I didn't realize you did that kind of work, or you did this, or can you help me out?" So just start. You don't have to have 100,000 followers. Just start the process. So social media to me was a game changer over the last couple of years, just because I was posting and it led to more and more work. So I just wanted to chime in on that as well.
Yeah, so important. And as we're speaking, I think, we're starting to touch on some of the things are hard, but you have to do them. So I know one of the things we discussed in our first conversation together was I love encouragement. I think positivity is really important right now, but I also think it's really important to pull back the curtain and talk about what's not so shiny. So I know we've touched a little bit on it throughout the conversation, but what would you identify as some potential, red flags, pitfalls, things that just suck about having a big brand or the process of building a personal brand? Like, what sucks? What do people need to know they're getting into?
Do you want to be really candid right now? All of us, whoever's joining, let's be really candid. The more you have a personal brand and the more you put yourself out there, the more people are going to hate on you and gossip about you. Okay, now we're going a little off script here, Walt, but I think this is really important to talk about because if you are not able to handle the pettiness of other individuals posting about you, saying things about you, then maybe it's, you don't want to keep really building up your brand and putting yourself. And the thing is, if you're putting yourself out there vulnerably in lots of ways and lots of capacities to, grow your brand, your exposure, to be working authentically with brands or companies, and that will come with ridicule, and most of it stems from, and I'm going to tell all of you this when it happens, comes from jealousy of your success, and it comes from people who just aren't working in the same capacities as you, and that's just something to know. Because it's hard for some people when they hear these things that happen, and they can't handle it, and it hurts. I will say that it hurts. And I have been the butt of so many jokes, and I don't care. What I do is whatever happens, I turn it and flip it, and I use it as ammunition to grow, and I make them look like the silly ones at the end. But that's a really big one.
Yeah.
There's a lot of heat.
And even just starting, my story was a disaster. I was bartending 5 nights a week. I worked at a nightclub. I was starting this business, having meetings at 10 in the morning. My wife was pregnant. We bought a house. A lot of craziness happening at once. But the one thing that happens when you go to change yourself, people around you notice that, right? And some people don't like that change, So it could be your mom. My mom was like, "What are you doing? Why are you acting like this? Why are you, So just be careful, because if you want to take yourself seriously, there's going to be a lot of people in your circle that don't like this new you that you're trying to do. And there's going to be some people that are going to stand by you. And those are your real friends. Those are your real family. Like I said, I say divorce your mom sometimes because, she wants you to stay safe and not do anything out of your comfort zone. So sorry, Mom, I love you, but I got to move forward. But
I posted something the other day and my dad was like, "I think that's inappropriate. You should take it down." And I was like, "No, I'm not taking it down." But 100%.
Yeah, my mom wants me to stay in a box and stay safe. But what did happen is just people start looking at you and they're like, "Oh, you're this entrepreneur guy. What are you doing? You're taking all these meetings. You're doing all this stuff, and you got to break through it. And it's just going to happen. And you're going to find out who your real friends are, who really supports you, and who's just out to tear you down. A lot of people like to tear people down nowadays instead of building the right people up. And it's just going to happen. So you got to have a little bit of thick skin and get through it. But that's just kind of how the start is. And obviously once you're rocking and rolling, it stays with you. So just keep going and grab some thick skin and do your thing.
Yeah. Do your thing. And just remember, if you see your friends doing their thing, cheer them on, because I say high tides raise all ships. And when your circle's doing great, it means you're doing great because you're of each other. So when your friend's doing something, champion them. As long as it's safe and it's good, it's positive. I don't care if it's silly, champion
good for you.
them.
Go for it. Yep.
Also the other things just to know is there's a lot of hustle. There's a ton of hustle and you got to be ready to get in there. And there's a lack of consistent scheduling. My schedule this week kind of is all over. I got 9 a.m. calls to go to 9 p.m. Zoom cocktail hours I have to do for people. And with that comes boundaries. And I know we're going to talk about that a little bit later, but you have to create boundaries in these situations. And that's not kind of hard to like cut people off but it's for your mental well-being and sanity.
Absolutely. Just because we work in an industry that is everyone else's fun industry doesn't mean we don't get to shut off, right? Because it is artwork. And I think I have to remind myself of that a lot. So when you get negative PR, you're going to get, if you're building a personal brand, I mean, hopefully you don't, but you probably will, because it's a digital space and people love to hide behind their keywords these days. So when you do get that negative PR, what do you do?
Walt and I've created a very good, right now I think it's like a 6-step program for everybody. And we actually want you to listen very carefully to this, okay? And as someone who's had negative PR, I can speak on this because I've worked through this. And it's not just 1 or 2 or 3 times, it just happens. I read YouTube comments the other day where people are fully hating on me. Like, it happens. So here's what we would like to impart to you. Walt, I'll take the first 3. You'll take the last 3. The first thing is, do not immediately react. It is so easy. We are like all about immediate reactions. That's how we operate these days. Everything's about immediacy. Don't. When negative PR or something happens, just relax, okay? And I try to tell people sometimes don't react for 24 hours. Take that time, because the same thing, like remember when you're hot-headed, you write letters and you're like, I'm going to send this email right now. And the next morning you're like, why did I do that? Things change. Emotions change when you give it some time. So when that negative PR comes, it gives you time to really think things through, okay? And also with that comes, don't interact with trolls. Don't interact with the negative comments. Just step away. If anything, turn off the phone, turn off the computer, and just step completely away for 24 hours, all right? The second one is, if this is a very big crisis, consult guidance and counseling, and that comes in the form of a crisis PR firm or crisis PR counselor, which exists. And I've worked with them before. I think a lot of people have. And sometimes there are like some brands and companies who will, have them in-house, and you can ask and inquire a brand and be like, do you have a crisis PR person I could work with? I need counseling. Work with a professional, work with a third-party professional who sometimes has nothing to do with this industry. Okay. Don't just count on your friends. They are not the professionals in handling crisis PR. Okay. Just going to throw that out there. And the third thing that I'm going to go before we do next, the third step is stop reading the comments. Nothing good will come from that. If something, read the comments later on once we've worked through it, that you're able to like go back and see it, but stop reading them. You will gain almost nothing. If any of the people who comment really want to reach out to you and talk to you, they'll send you a direct message. Hopefully they'll text you. And like, those are the people you need to talk to. If someone's that upset with you, they need to contact you directly. Don't read the comments.
Yeah. And then just continuing with it is really don't make a mountain out of a molehill. What is the comment? What is the thing? Like, is it really that big of a deal? Don't engage if it's something kind of small, like just, Pam said, just, take 24 hours and step away from it. And maybe it's really not that big of a deal. So don't stress it too much. And then, is there anything, constructive that comes out of it? Like that's really a thing. I mean, I've done some events where somebody gave me some feedback and people were like, don't worry about that. And I was like, you know what? That person actually made a, they might've been a jerk about it, but they made a good point, and I can improve upon that. So, look for that constructive criticism where it comes from. And then also if you can't take the heat, don't do it. So it's going to come. And like I said, we live in a world where people just like to tear down, which is super unfortunate. They're not building up as much as they should, but this is the business of what it's going to be. And if you want to just go work for somebody, go work for somebody. But if you really want to build your thing, you're going to put yourself out there, and somebody's going to knock you down or go for your whatever you're trying to do. So it's coming. Just be prepared for it. And if that's not your thing, don't engage.
If you don't already own the book, So You've Been Publicly Shamed, that's the title of the book. So You've Been Publicly Shamed. It's about like 4 years old now, 4 or 5 years old. Highly suggest that you just go buy a copy right now. Like, you're on this chat with me. Yes, Robin from Nance has read the book too. We actually heard on the author give a TED talk about it. You should read it. You should read it. Doesn't matter if it's happened to you or because you've been on the other side and you've made comments when you've seen something happen. You need to understand all aspects of what happens on social media. There's also a great documentary called The Social Dilemma. And I really think we should all need to understand a bit more about our responsibility in engagement with social media, commenting, your self-branding and awareness.
I love it. 6-step program. I just learned a lot. Our last question that we decided to kind of address today was personal boundaries. So, we talked a lot about building and being open and receiving criticism and, but how do we create those boundaries for ourselves? And within this, I want to acknowledge we had another question in the chat from Samara. Hi, Samara, who actually I met, really met for the first time when she corrected me on a post on Facebook, and we had an open dialogue about it, actually. And I thank her for that because she taught me a lot. Anyway, that's personal, but she asked the question, how do you determine your price / your worth and stick to it with brands, which I think kind of rolls into the idea of boundaries a little bit. So we can either address that first or kind of roll it into our conversation around boundaries. But I thought that was a great question that a lot of folks are upping right now in reference to this. So,
Pam, you want to take a stab at this?
Sure. Smart. That's a great question. Also, hi, I love that you're here. Thank you so much for being here. I have this conversation a few times a week. People, I don't know how I've become the authority, but people call me a lot about this, and I've gone to a lot of mentors about this. Jason Luttrell is a really great person. I think if you ever need some guidance on this topic, he is a wonderful person to talk to about the business of a bartender, which he just wrote a book about, and he just published. I think it was last week it went to publish. When it comes to selling yourself and your price, a lot of it has to do with understanding your self-worth and what you are worth in incremental times. So I always tell bartenders, what is it that they're asking you to do? How much time is it going to take and the effort? And on top of that, what intellectual property are you giving away? Are they using your likeness? Is that associated with it? There's a lot of categories on top of it. Sadly, I can't say there is a set price. But what I will say is that if you ask for a price that you think is absolutely fair for your time, say it's a 3-hour project and you quote them what you believe truly is a fair price. And I'm going to tell you all right now, if you say $100 for 3 hours, get out of here. Slap you. You are worth so much more than that. Okay. You're worth so much more than that. I don't care where you live or what you do. You're worth so much more than that. If they try to budge you on your number or question it and they try to reduce you by a lot, then you don't want to work with that partner because they don't respect you or your time or your worth. I definitely have had situations like that, and I remember who they are. And I think really the biggest thing is time. What they're asking of you. Is this internal or is this public facing? Because that has to do with then it uses your intellectual property, but also your likeness. If it's public facing, that means you're tied to it. And just ensuring that it is comparable to the time you would be either at work or more than that. If you're doing a 4-hour project, that could be kind of like an entire night of a bar shift.
Yeah. Yeah, and just trying to jumping in on that too. It's for me, it's have you done the job before? Have you done the work? Are you looking to step your toes into that? So, if a few hours is a few $100 and you could start down a new road, like I said, when I started out doing my stuff, I was making a ton of money bartending, but I started doing cheaper jobs just to learn it. Cause I didn't, standing behind a table is not hard, but I never done it before. So I kind of said yes to a few things just to start that process for me. So there are some people that say they're $800 an hour, but then they get hired every 2 years. So there's that as well, so it's kind of know your worth, but also at the same time, are you working and do you want to work more and you're trying to learn and you're trying to get new experiences? So think about that as well. I'm not saying to cut your price in half, but it's are you looking to step into something new and you're trying to learn it? Like I said, sometimes I've just made up a price and then the first time, well, I learned my lesson there. Now I really know what I'm worth, so it wasn't worth $350 because I walked away with whatever, but now I know what it is. So, it's hard to tell in the beginning, but I wouldn't overthink it. Sometimes just set a price, see how it goes. And then, for the future, what it's going to be.
So we've covered our questions in the chat, but I know if we have a couple more minutes, are there any other boundaries and, final words on boundaries you would give folks? I know that was a great question to address. So
I think just The biggest thing is just know your boundaries, know when to engage, when not to engage. If something doesn't authentically feel you, don't do it. Remember what your brand is and what you stand for. You don't have to say yes to every brand. I say no to the majority of people who come to me. I actually pass along a lot of work to other bartenders who fit that brand or fit that project a lot better. Remember, I think about a lot of other people like who could use that opportunity. Learn to say no. And Walt said it just before. He was like, if you get a bad gut feeling, walk away because you're probably right.
Yeah. And that's exactly it. And, like I said, what I learned the hard way when I started out. I had 4 business partners and 3 of them still owe me money to this day, because I was just so excited to do stuff and I wasn't taking a step back and thinking about what I was really getting into. So, if you've got that bad feeling, ask very specific questions. What exactly is the rate? What exactly do you need me to do? What exactly, just lay it out there and try to figure out what they're asking you to do, and don't just say yes and then get mad later because it was not what you wanted. But like I said, if it doesn't feel right, it's probably not right, or it needs to be investigated more. But at the same time too, it's like, you don't have to have a brand attached to you personally. But if you're looking to step into something new, like I said, I went from a brand ambassador to representing this beer company just because I wanted to grow a sales division. So I went from like a guy in a suit to a guy in a t-shirt with a backpack full of beer. And people are like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm trying to do something new. So don't be afraid to get out of your comfort zone and try something, because it could lead down the road. So don't be too fancy. But at the same time, if something doesn't feel right and this person's not, what you think they are, question it and just find out as many details as you can before moving forward. Because you don't want to get caught in a deal or a project for 6 months that's not going to be worth it for you.
And just quickly, I know we're about, but just going back to the last topic, I totally forgot this about setting prices. Remember who it is that you're working with. Certain brands have a lot of money and certain brands and companies don't have as much. And sometimes there is pro bono work you do. I certainly do pro bono work for people, like charitable things, which you can actually write off on taxes. But I don't quote everybody the same price. And I know which brands are emerging and trying to get started. And it's also like leveraging your platform and your assistants and your brand to sometimes help an emerging brand that you really believe in. Maybe you believe in the people in the company, the ethics, like what they stand for. Just remember that sometimes those tithes that you make really early on can lead to something bigger down the line, and lending a hand then can mean a lot more, because we've all been in that place before. So,
yeah. And you can always ask people what their budget is too, and then go back to the drawing board and be like, all right, for this budget, I could do X, Y, and Z. I mean, it depends on if it's a project. I've done that before where people are like, hey, I've only got X amount. I'm like, okay, well, I could handle some of this stuff for you for that kind of budget. So there's different ways of like negotiating and working it as well.
Absolutely. And brands come to bartenders because you are worthwhile, is because we need you, right? We're not, we couldn't do it by ourselves. So understand that, you are worth so much, and we want you to be a part of our world. So, yeah, I mean, with that, I know we did so well on time. Boom. I know we probably have about a minute left here, but before we go, I just wanted to say a couple things. One, thank you, Pam and Walt. This was such an incredible conversation. I learned so much. We're getting a lot of thumbs up here in the chat. So
I'm so, thank you all for being here.
I'm thankful.
I'm just adding our Instagram handles in case people want to ask any like direct follow-up questions.
Perfect.
I hope that's okay. This is the comment I'm adding at the end for anyone watching. You can reach out to any of us. Seriously. This is nothing, we're not hiding on this information. Like we're here to help and assist all of you. And thank you, Forman, and for your time, and because of the cocktail for allowing us to host this conversation.
We love the opportunity. Thanks, guys.
Appreciate you. Thanks, everybody.
Nice.
I see all the LinkedIn coming in right now. Thanks.
When you all LinkedIn.
I'm getting all the alerts. I've just got like 6 people connected.
Happy to help you develop them.
Amazing. I mean, I know that this chat also has been recorded, and they're going to put it in the on-demand section. So if any of you are like, "This was great. I really wish my other friend would come, or my bar manager came," I know that this is going to be in the on-demand session. So definitely direct people there after the fact. We'd love to have you. And again, like Pam said, we'd love to answer any questions after the fact. Happy to share journeys and any learnings. So appreciate you guys. Happy I know. And I think it's cocktail time, so I'll let you go. Good.
I know, grab your
brand. All right, guys. Well, I think we click the red button here and let people go. But
all right.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.